Again, it's really based on the skill level more than it is a priority. And a lot of times, you've got a work team that you may have some that are A, some that are B. That's what happens with most work teams. You got some that are more experienced than others. You got some that are just a set of hands. You got some that are team leaders. You got some that have some skill levels. But again, it's our job to try to determine what we think the team's going to be needing. All right, so that's why we want to look at that. Then you got your C team. They may still need to know how to operate chainsaws, but these are trees already on the ground and not under pressure. Small trees, some tear outs, and maybe some mold. Now, there's some discrepancy here on our new forms. We only have 3 teams, A, B, and C. C is obviously and D are the teams that aren't as skilled. Don't let that confuse you too much, but you will see some discrepancy there. Again, the D team is little or no equipment. These are people that can just pull brush to the curb, okay? And as I said, most teams are going to have a combination of skilled and unskilled. Okay? And there'll always be a team leader. Somebody that knows what they're doing is going to lead a team of volunteers. We don't want untrained people going out there and get hurt or causing more damage. So it's always important to have somebody that's experienced. Some tree damage concerns, anything that's on structure, or if it's on the ground or on fences, it's not laying down on the ground. It could be dangerous in cutting it up. Any leaning trees. The other thing is the structures could be damaged. We don't want, as I just said, we don't want to cause more damage to the structure because the teams didn't really know how to handle it. And I won't say that every team you send out there's going to be right 100% of the time. If you've ever done any tree work, you know, you can get your best guess as to what's going to happen, but sometimes the unexpected happens, and, you know, we have to let people understand that. And many times that's what the work crews are doing if the survivors are there. We're saying, you know, we'll take it down, but, you know, this could happen or that can happen. Are you all right with that? Because they always have the option to call a professional. And that's obviously not your job, that's the work crew, but again, we're just trying to identify what we see. Dead or damaged limbs above, those are the hangers, the widowmakers. You see something up there, and I already told you, if it's up in a tree, you better tell them we can't help them with that. Because we're not going to, don't assume we have a climber. We don't have a bucket truck, so they're going to have to probably hire someone that has that. Extremely large trees, depending on the work crew, all we want to do is report it. We want to measure the diameter, which is the distance from one side to the other. You don't have to get too close to it, and be careful getting too close to trees, especially if they're under pressure. Guesstimate. You know, just try to get a close, if it's 2 foot, if it's 3 foot, it doesn't have to be exact. So we have some kind of idea what size trees you're looking at. And then property line issues. In many cases, we rely on the survivor to tell us where their property lines are. They know where they are. They aren't going to be marked in most cases unless there's a fence or something. And in some cases, a tree's falling down. This fellow's tree fell down, but it's half in his yard and half in the neighbor's yard. Well, in that case, we need to get the neighbor's signature as well, unless the tree's cut right on the property line and we leave the guy's tree in the other yard. So those are things we may have to do, or make somebody aware of, or tell the neighbor that they're going to have to go to D-Rock and take care of it, or if we can do it in the field, we can do it, okay? And that has happened, especially in small lots. All right, here's some guidelines for tree sizes. You know, in the past, a lot of people say, well, there's 3 large trees in the yard, or there's 3 small trees in the yard. Well, that doesn't tell us a lot. This gives you a little bit more guideline. We still want you to measure it the best you can, but this just gives you an idea. You know, anything over 18 inches is we consider an extra large tree, okay?
Can you go back to that?
This one? Okay. So in other words, what I'm telling you is don't say there's 3 medium trees in the yard. We still want you to measure them. If there's 3 trees, say there's 3 trees, but they're, you know, one's 6 inch, one's 12 inch. Try to give us some idea. Because again, we're trying to determine the crew. We may be, and you're also asked on that form to try to guesstimate the crew size. That's probably going to be hard for most of us to do. Again, giving that information as precise as we can that's when the work crew or the site coordinator can try to determine what that's going to be. You know, not every job we do is a one-day job. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 days. It depends on the severity of it. Again, all we're trying to do is report. You got it? Okay. Roof tarping. This is important. Roof pitches of 612 and steeper, we're just not doing.
Thankfully.
You just tell them right off the bat, we are not skilled enough to do that. A professional is going to do it. Now, a lot of people say, well, what does a 612 look like? A 612 is like a 45. There's an app you can put on your phone. It's called Roof Pitch. And you put it on there and you hold it up and it'll tell you approximate pitch. If it looks steep, it probably is, and we're not going on it. So just be honest with them and tell them right up front, we don't do roofs that steep. They'll have to get somebody else. Mobile homes are flat.
That's a lot of roofs.
What's that?
For 612 and more.
Well, it is. It is. And, you know, just because it's less than a 612 doesn't mean my crew's going to want to go on it. You have to have a comfort level. We don't force anybody to get on a roof. I personally, my days on being on the roof are over with. I mean, I've been on roofs, but, you know, it's dangerous. And, you know, they train us to use harnesses and ropes and stuff like that, and you'll find many of the crews don't do that. They just get on up there and do their thing. But if they fall off, it could ruin them, paralyze somebody. So, again, our job is to identify it, and if it's over 612, we just flat out tell them. Now, we still want you to determine that pitch if it's less than that, and document it. Again, pictures sometimes tell the story. That app's good if you're not sure when you're looking at it. Take a picture. Let someone else determine whether it's too steep or not. The height of roof from the ground. From the ground to the edge of the roof is what we're looking for. Now, if they put up a ladder, the ladder's got to extend 3 feet above the edge of the roof. So if somebody's coming off the roof, they got something to hold on to before they go down. One of the reasons we want that is we're sending a crew out there. They didn't know what kind of ladder they're going to need. We've been in sites where there were several different lengths ladders. If we gave them the wrong ladder, they couldn't get on the roof. So it's just information to help with proper tools and the proper crews going out there. If you got a tape measure, you should be able to determine pretty close, within a foot or two. If you're not, overestimate slightly. You know, try not to make a 20-foot roof a 30-foot roof, but, you know, just try to give us some guidelines there. The condition of the roof. The shingles missing, is the chimney falling out? I mean, those are all things we need to know. Safety issues. So if you've got a chimney that's half apart and half the bricks are laying on the roof, that's important to know because they could slide off and hit somebody in the head. And it could be you, so be careful if you see something like that. But mention it. Those are all important issues. And then the condition. If you see shingles gone, you see half a dozen on the front and half a dozen on the back, just indicate those things. Sometimes we will try to replace shingles, not always, and don't tell them we will, but in most cases we'll at least put a tarp up there. Sometimes it's easier just to put some shingles on. The size of the tarp needed is important. Again, tarps come in different sizes. Sometimes we take tarping material off a roll so we can make it as long as we want. But if they only need a 10 by 10, then they only need a 10 by 10. But try to determine the length. Now, just so you'll know how tarping works, because a lot of you have not been through that class, all tarps have to go over the peak of the roof. You can't just put a square on the side of them because water will run under it and still get in. So you've got to go all the way up to the roof peak and then come down and cover the hole. And then overlap far enough away from the hole that water's not going to run back in there. So you got to remember, with that in mind, how much tarp they're going to need. So you got to kind of estimate the distance from the bottom of that hole to the peak of the roof and then the width. Now you can use the house as a guideline. So if you know it's from that wall to that wall, then you can measure or walk off that distance, and you know that'll be fine that way, and then just try to determine. And if you're not sure, just make it square. Whatever this dimension is, make it square if you think that'll at least go over the roof. And it doesn't have to go over the peak far. It just has to go over the peak so that it stops that water from running down underneath it. So
So
try
to be clear, I'm giving them the dimension of the tarp they need to put on the roof.
Right.
Not that I have a 10 by 10 hole that I need.
right. Well, you can tell what size hole it is,
50 tarp.
but you want to let them know what tarp to bring, because again, remember, you're the eyes and ears of the work crew that's coming in behind you. They haven't seen it. They want to be able to bring what they need, manpower, tool-wise, equipment, and when they get there, be able to do the job and not say, oh, we didn't bring a tarp. Nobody told us we needed one. Those are the things we got. We're information people. And if there's something that you see that you think would be important to that work crew, notate it. Put yourself in that work crew leader's position. You know, you're bringing a bunch of people that have different skill levels. You may have a minimal amount of tools, but the site's going to provide tarps and it's going to provide a lot of things. Knowing that, you know, what are you going to need to bring? So try to put yourself in their position. Yes, sir.
I trained in recovery 2 weeks ago, and they said they've changed their policy and they're not going to do any more shingling. They said
Okay.
they've gotten into conflicts with insurance companies. And
Yeah,
so all they're going to
yeah.
do is
Well, that's good.
tarps.
That's good information. Most of the time they won't, unless it's one or two shingles that have blown off or something. But typically it's more than one or two. It's usually half the roof or you got holes in it. But that's good information. So size of tarp is needed. Mobile home tarping, we do want to know if it's a mobile home, if you're the first ones out there. And a lot of times you'll already know that information going out. Again, we want to know the roof height so we can get the right ladder. Mobile homes are easy to tarp because they're flat. And so again, that's just information we want to bring back. So, yes,
You can count the number of shingles up to the roof, multiply it by .42, it'll give you the footage.
there you go.
Just write that down in your notes, really. .42, our average shingle covers 5 inches. And if you count, if you can sit on the ground and count how many shingles from the bottom of the hole to the top of the roof, multiply it by .42, it'll give you the footage, and then just round up a little bit. The size of the hole, add about 3 foot per side, and you'll be in good shape.
Good information. We'll all remember that when it's time. Again, you don't have to be exact, and most tarps come in 10 by 10, 20 by 20. We've seen membrane that comes off the roll, so if they're doing like a whole mobile home, they can roll off the roll and do it that way. But yeah, just try to get as accurate as you can. So flood damage concerns. The height of water in the home. We talked about the watermark. You're going to see a mark. You're going to see a watermark, or the homeowner will say, yeah, water came up to here. It may be gone by the time you get in there, but you'll see evidence of where it was. So we want to know that. Is there visible mold? So there's your answer there. You may not see any visible mold, but if the water got into that house and got in behind that wall, it may be growing back there, but it hasn't come through the sheetrock yet, because it's going to start in that wall and then it's going to start seeping through. Or it could start and go the other way. So we want to know that. Old growth, I don't know that we're really going to be able to identify that in some cases, but if you think there's some old growth, just indicate that. Contents removed, are we going to remove the contents? A lot of the homeowners or survivors will say, well, I'll take care of that if you guys can come in and clean out. So try to get that arranged so we know how many people to come. Do we need 20 people to come and remove contents, or we just need 10 to do the interior? Have that conversation. But tell them, if they agree to do it, that it really needs to be done before our crew gets there. Give them the responsibility to get that done. And as I mentioned before, sometimes I wouldn't say everything that gets wet has to go to the curb. If it's hardwood, a lot of times it can be cleaned. It's a rarity, let's put it that way, but there are cases that some of that furniture can be cleaned up. There may be some mold growing on it, it can be cleaned down. But if the survivor says, I don't want this going to the street, well then make a note of that a particular piece of equipment, or put a tag on it, or do something to identify it. Hopefully, when the work crew gets there, that survivor will be there and can relay that information to them too. But if they make comments like that, because you're telling them what's going to happen, all this stuff's going to end up on the curb. And then if they have concerns or they have some items that they want something else done with, then that's what you need to kind of notate on that. Structural condition of the floor. We typically go down to the subfloor. Now, for those of you who don't know how floors work, you have a foundation, you have floor joists, and then plywood usually goes on top. That plywood is what we call our subfloor. Then on top of that, you may have hardwood floor, you may have carpet, you may have linoleum, you may have tile. Typically, we'll go down to that subfloor. We do not remove subfloor for several reasons. First, you don't know when we're coming back, if we're coming back to rebuild. Now you've left the house open for animals and anything else to get in there. Plus, if there's a crew coming in to replace the floor, they got nothing to work off of. What usually happens with the subfloor is that the crew that's going to replace the floor is the one that will take up the floor. They'll take up a section, put down some, take up a section, put down some. So don't promise that we'll ever take up subfloor. We'll take it down to the subfloor, whatever that is. Carpet certainly is going to be pulled out. Hardwood floors typically will be pulled out. Tile, anything that gets wet, because what happens underneath it, it starts to buckle and it's going to all come along. So again, just make sure they understand, and we want to know what the condition is. We want to know what's on that floor. If it's full of tile, the work guy's going to want to know that. He's going to have special tools to get it up. He's going to want to know whether it's on concrete, if it's on wood. You know, sometimes we've got houses built on slab. We need to know that, because now there's no crawl space to have to concern ourselves with.
Is that hard and vinyl tile?
Sir?
Hard and vinyl tile?
Yeah, anything down to the subfloor, because water has penetrated it, and even the subfloor has gotten wet. But in some cases, if it's not a masonite, or not masonite, but the particle board, it can dry out. Not all cases, but again, we don't take it out. We don't want to expose the house at that point, and just let them know why. In mobile homes, it's usually a composite board. It's going to swell up. Again, you know, we know it needs to come out, but we're not going to be able to do that. Usually, if the homeowner's ready to replace that floor, sometimes we'll take it out, and if he's ready to come back in there, but it's a job by job. But in general rule, we're not taking out the subfloor. Power, water, gas. We want to know. Power is important. A lot of times the power has been interrupted because trees come down somewhere, and it's a temporary thing. I always suggest to walk around that house and find the meter base. The meter is, you know, we've all got one on our homes. If there's a meter base on that house and the meter is gone, that power has been terminated and probably will not be restored until a lot of things get done. You need to indicate that. That crew coming out is going to have to bring a generator. If they're running power tools, they need to know that there's no power on that house. If there's a meter in there, but there's still no power, we want to still indicate that too, because there may not be power on it when they come back, or there might be. We just don't know. Okay, so we need to get that information to the crews so they've got what they need when they get there. Is there water in the house? You know, we may be doing something where we need water to wash something, wash ourselves if nothing else, because a lot of times you need to be able to clean up. And is there gas on the house? We're not going to use the gas. We just need to know if it's a hazard we need to be concerned about. So those are important things to know. Where to put debris and items to be saved. We talked about that. Debris is piled on the curb, not in the street. You saw in one of those pictures some of it gone in the street. The towns or the municipalities will usually pick it up, but not in all cases. I've had people say put it in the backyard because they're responsible for getting rid of it, and they're not ready to get rid of it, so they pile it up in their backyard. I'd rather have it in the front than in the back, because you're closer to where it's going than it is in the back. Anyway, that could be up to the homeowner, so at least ask them about that. And if the homeowner's reluctant to start work, you know, don't pressure them. Just say, well, you know, you got our phone number. You do the assessment, and you're already assured that they're the homeowner. Okay, if they're a renter, you're going to cut the conversation right there. You're going to pray with them. You're going to bless them, and you're going to move on. And you're going to give them our information so they can give it to the homeowner in case that's what's going to happen. Because like I said, even though they may not be the homeowner, I'm not saying we won't come back and fix it if we get the proper documentation from the homeowner. But if you got somebody after you've told them what's going to happen and they say, oh, you know, I don't know about that, you're tearing up my house. Well, if they're not comfortable with it, then we won't do it. And typically, they're the ones that haven't signed the form, because if they've come to our D-Rock, they've been informed a little bit about what we're going to be doing. And they have to be comfortable with what we're doing, because that form is a disclaimer. It's a waiver that what we're doing, they've agreed to, and it's in our hands. I know it's getting warm in here, and I'm sorry, but yeah. I'll tell you what we could do. I could maybe throw that AC down. It is 8:30. Give me about 5 more minutes, all right? And we'll get to a certain stopping point, and then we'll start up tomorrow. We talked about this already. That form has to be signed. Recommend dogs be located. Know the phone number of the D-Rock and the address. Don't give out your personal cell phone number, and describe what we'll do. A lot of this is repetitive, but I think it's important because this is stuff you need to remember, and also know that you're not going to be doing this next week. It's going to be, well, you might, but more than likely it's going to be a while, and you're going to forget a lot of this stuff. That's why the handbook's important, and we hope that there's going to be some videos available either online or on the site so that you can do a little refreshment too. And remember that if you're not experienced, you're probably going to go out with one. So taking pictures, share the concerns with the homeowner. Talk to the recovery op, Blue Hat. That's when you go back to the site, you can show those pictures, you can explain what's going on, because he needs some insight. He hasn't seen it, you have, and to be able to share that with what's going on. Never assume that what you can't see or don't expect. That's why sometimes talking to the survivor will give you insight as to what's going on without seeing it. And sometimes a second opinion is necessary. And don't be afraid to call the D-Rock. If you're out there and you've got a question and you're not sure what to do, that's what that number's for. There's somebody there that can at least talk to you. Yeah, it might require somebody else to go out and look at it, but it may be just a question you've got. And you may get an answer over the phone, and then you can complete it and move forward. We talked about this. It's important. And you're going to see it more. Just don't make those promises. Try to be careful about what you say. Practice what you say if you need to before you go out there so that you don't inadvertently say something that you're going to have to walk back. And remember, you may not say we will build. You might say we might do rebuild. They're only going to remember rebuild and that you said it, and then they're coming back whether you said that or not. So actually really be careful about that. Just try to figure out a way to show the compassion, the love of Jesus, encouraging, and but don't promise things that we really can't back up. We're going to wrap this up with just these forms. Again, before you leave the job site, make sure look at your assessment form, review it, make sure you've done everything on there, check it again. It's really a short form. If you need signatures, make sure you've gotten them all. If for some reason you don't have a signature, just make sure they understand until we get a signature, we can't send the crew. Leave it on them. Most of the time, you're either going to have that signature already, or they'll be ready to sign it when you get there. Unless you get somebody who's reluctant, and if they are, they say, that's fine. We just can't do anything without your signature, and leave it in their hands. As long as they know how to get in touch with us. Paperclip notes and forms to the request for assistance. I like a stapler. Sometimes paper clips will come apart. Print out pictures and attach. You may or may not need to do that. Sometimes with digital stuff, we can just download it to a card or a drive and do it that way. And go over jobs with the Blue Hat. Let's just look at a couple of pictures real quick. That's the mold. That's minor mold, but it's black, and it can be in stripes. It can be in round holes. Anybody see any problem there?
No.
Would you go in that house? Now, here's something that of course, in my mind, that's going to be bulldozed down. But you got to be careful telling somebody that. That's their home. Now, anybody that knows what they're seeing here knows they're not going back in that house, if ever. But be careful what you tell people. It's got foundation damage, so it's not even safe to go in there. They're obviously not living there.
You can sit there and cry with them.
Pray with them. Pray with those folks and tell them that that God saved them. He might not have saved that house, but He saved them. But obviously that's a severe case right there. That's a little less severe, but there could be some foundation damage. Anybody see anything that I talked about on that back wall? The meter's gone. So that one's the meter's been pulled. There is no power in that house. So a crew that comes is going to need a generator. And we might want to make a note that they need to bring a generator. Okay? A lot of crews have trailers and they've got that stuff, but that's good to look at that. So you're going to see that if you walk around the house. All right, what do you see in that picture, anybody? There's not much we're gonna be able to do for that fella, and you just have to say that, you know, you got some severe structural damage there. So pray with him and wish him the best of luck. And then you can make a notation, you may have a work order on that house. I wouldn't make one, because there's not much we can do, but if you're given a work order, maybe they misled him a little bit and said, well, it moved a little bit. And when you get there, you see that. So, again, take a picture and notate it. It's hard to tell whether that tree's on the roof or not, but in either case, what priority would you give that one? Yeah, I'd say that's probably a 1, because it's near the front door, so it could be hindering access, and the way it's leaning, it could come down at any time, so that would definitely be a priority 1. And I'd say probably an 18.
Yeah.
Yeah, A+ would be good, but we don't go to. All right, how about that one?
2.
Well,
That's a one.
That's a 1, and why is that?
Because it's hindering
Power
access.
line.
Exactly, it's blocking, well, it could be on the power line, but it's blocking access.
Ah.
Driveways, walkways, that's a priority 1. It may not need an 18 because it looks like it's on the ground. Now, that was what I was talking about. Does it look like he's got a neighbor that might be involved with that tree?
Yeah.
So we may need to be able to get the neighbor's approval before we can do anything. You know, and again, if we offer to take the tree away, I don't think the neighbor's gonna say, well, I'm not signing anything. Okay, fine, we'll just cut it right there at the line. But again, you know, most people appreciate our help and they want our help. Just don't tell them they'll be there tomorrow, you know. Again, you can't promise when they're coming. You just say, if we have a work crew that'll come, they will contact you.
What if we can't get the neighbor?
Then all you can do is leave a note.
But
Sorry we
half the
missed
tree?
Sorry we missed you, and let them contact us, or the neighbor can give them information. Again, we can't do anything without a signature, so that's why it's important. We saw this one before. Priority on this one? Maybe what kind of team? Yeah, I think so. All right, that's a tree under pressure. We talked about that. You see why it's under pressure? It's still attached. It's gotta be cut. And when it cuts, it's gonna move, and I don't know that anybody really knows exactly where it's going. And you be careful, if you're going up and trying to measure that tree, measure it down away from it, or stand back away from it and guesstimate. Don't get up too close, because it can come apart right when you're standing next to it, okay? I would say that's, what would you give it on priority?
Or how close it is.
Well, you
Could be
don't
a 2,
really
but it
have
may
enough
take an 18.
information, do we?
Right.
But I think an 18 would be appropriate for it.
Right.
If it's not a problem.
Priority 2 with an 18.
All right, we're about to wrap up here in a minute. I just want to cover a couple more things. This is an unsafe sticker. You see one of these on the front door? Are you going inside?
No.
That means stay out, and it's for a reason. It could be structural damage, whatever. Okay. All right, we're going to wrap up for tonight. I appreciate your patience. We're going to pick up tomorrow. We're on page 59 of 83, so it won't be that much more tomorrow. We got a lot of other things, some videos to watch tomorrow.